Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by and welcome to the Civil Rights Monthly Webinar. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Later, we will conduct a question-and-answer session and instructions will be given at that time. If you should require assistance on the call today, please press *0 at any time. As a reminder, today's call is being recorded. And I would now like to turn the call over to your host for today, Warren Whitlock, Associate Administrator for the Office of Civil Rights. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes at the beginning of this webinar session to thank all of you for your participation on today's call. As you know, Federal Highway's Civil Rights Discipline on a monthly basis provides these civil rights webinars to assist you in better understanding the civil rights program and to ask questions and to hear from subject matter experts at Federal Highway, at state DOTs, and other places, depending on the agenda. This is the third session we've had this month. The first one was really an internal session for civil rights specialists with Federal Highway for their ethics training. And then we had one last month in February, and now we're having one in March. We really do look at these as opportunities for you all to hear from Headquarters Office of Civil Rights and for us to hear from you about some of the challenges and successes you're having there in your divisions. We certainly appreciate these opportunities not only to share information with you, but to exchange ideas about making the program stronger. So again, thank you all for your participation. Thank you all for your hard work every day out there in the divisions and the states to make the civil rights program as strong as it can be. And again, we're here to work with you and support you. Your success is our success. So now I'd like to turn it over to Martha Kenley and Kimberly Sarmuxness. Martha?
Thank you, Warren, and hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. As you know, Warren said this is the third webinar of the month, but he meant of the year, just so you don't feel like you missed 2 others this month. But anyway, today we're going to be, actually, Kimberly Sarmuxness, our DBE program analyst here at Headquarters, is going to be presenting on the Uniform Report of DBE Awards and Commitments. And the reason we decided that this was an important webinar to present nationally is because we would like to come across with our state DOTs and recipients and divisions to come to a common understanding of how we at HCR expect the report to be completed so that we can provide the most accurate and timely information to our stakeholders. As you know, we get a request for these reports quite often from Congress, certainly from the Office of the Secretary, and from various stakeholders. We noticed there were a lot of common mistakes, and so we thought it was best to just kind of walk through it and make sure that we got all of your questions answered and gave everyone at the same time the same information so that we can get the best reports possible. So at this time, I'd like to hand it over to Kimberly Sarmuxness. She is the one that actually receives the reports, reviews them, and corrects all the mistakes. But anyway, thank you, Kimberly, and please.
Thank you, Martha. So today we're going to be talking about the uniform report. I'm going to go over the deadlines to submit and also the new format that will be required June 1st. And then we will talk about the common mistakes and how to completely fill out the uniform report. So before I begin, I just want to point out that we have a file pod in the corner of the PowerPoint. The first one is the uniform report Excel template, which has all the formulas built in. And this is something I will be talking about later, and it'll be helpful for you to use this template and turn it in this Excel format. And then also we have the uniform report instructions and the cheat sheet with the formulas in it in a PDF format. And these are the instructions that you can also find in your Regulations 49 CFR Part 26, Appendix B. So as Martha mentioned, we receive many inquiries from Congress dealing with DBE data, and usually they come to us and the data is needed ASAP. So it's very important for us to have the most current DBE data here at HCR. Also, on June 1st and December 1st, we send our report to OSDBU, the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization here at USDOT. So there's always a quick turnaround for us to get that report to that office. So if you get emails from me asking for the report, it's because people are emailing me asking for the report. So that's why. So for our deadline, these are submitted semi-annually, and I've had some divisions ask me if they can submit an annual report. This is not needed. You don't need to submit an annual report. Just submit one for the first half and the second half of the year, June 1st and June 2nd. June 1st and December 1st. And I'm going to move this file pod, and I will bring it back up at the end for everybody to download it. There we go, so everyone can see now. So the first half of the fiscal year is coming to an end March 31st. So about from April 1st to May 31st, you will have about 2 months to complete this uniform report. So divisions, you may want to ask the state DOTs to send the reports to you a little bit earlier than June 1st. So then you can submit it to HCR by June 1st. Starting this June 1st, I'm going to be requiring here at HCR that all uniform reports are turned in an Excel format. And again, you can download that template and use that to send your reports in. And in addition to the Excel format, we need a signed PDF. And both of these can be uploaded to the SharePoint website. And I'm just going to take you there, walk you through how to get there right now, just so there's no confusion. So here's our SharePoint site. And you're going to scroll down to DBE page. Go to Share Documents. And then this will be FY14 and the first half. And then you can see there's a list of states, so you would just go into the correct folder and upload your data. So I have those instructions written here. Oh, did that not work?
No, it did.
Oh. Let's see if I can figure out. Well, I don't know how to share the screen. Do you know how to do that, Martha?
I don't.
But the good news is I have the link under Submit here. So this PowerPoint will also be available for download, and then you can just click on the PowerPoint, on this link, and it'll take you straight there. And you can always contact me, and I can also walk you through it on the telephone. Yes, I will be emailing the links. I will send them to the divisions, and then they can share that with the state DOT. Okay, for reporting guidelines, it's important that sub-recipients must submit their data to direct recipients included in their report, and do not report on FTA or FAA funded contracts. These will be reported on the separate reports. It is also important to remember to report only on federal dollars. So as you can see, we have an example here. Typically, federal contracts are 80% federal, 20% state. So I'm going to use that in the example. So if you have a $2 million contract, 80% of that is $1,600,000, and then 10% of that is $160,000. And the reason we do 10% is because that would be the DBE goal on this contract. So then that would be the DBE commitment, $160,000. For counting rules, it's important that you make sure the DBE participation was counted correctly. And you can find these counting rules in 49 CFR 26, Part 55. And then it's also important that if the DBE is a prime, count only the dollar value of the work performed by DBE prime and DBE subcontractors. This also means do not report over 100% and only report the federal share. So for the purpose of today's webinar, I divided the uniform report into 4 sections. So we're going to talk about Part 1, General Info, Part 2, Awards Commitments, Part 3, the Ethnicity and Gender Breakdown, and Part 4, Actual Payments on Contracts. Now Part 1 is pretty simple, but we actually do have a few common mistakes on this. I want to ask everyone to please make sure you fill out your state name in the name of recipient box. This will help us when we print out these reports and compile them together so we can ensure we have the correct state. Also, please make sure your overall goal is included on the form and that the percentage is rounded to the nearest tenth. And this is stated in the regulations. So Part 2, the awards and commitments, 8A through 9I, should include all types of prime contracts awarded or committed, including professional or consultant services, constructions, purchase of materials or equipment. And then remember, dollar amounts are to reflect only the federal share of such contracts and rounded to the nearest dollar. So next we have a screenshot of some of the most common mistakes from this section. Now the first one, circled in red, is that subcontracts is often less than the total, the dollar amount. Okay, the first one is that subcontracts cannot be more than the prime contracts awarded for that period. So because this is a subset, which is why you do not add them for 9.5A. The next one is the total number of subcontracts may be greater than the number of prime contracts, located in column B. And then column D is just to make sure you check your math. We receive a lot of reports with math errors, and if you use that Excel template, this will help you in the long run. The next common mistake is the total number and dollar amount of prime contracts. As you can see, 8E and 8F, these should always be 0, and this is because DBE prime contracts are always race neutral. So as you can see, this is a correctly filled out uniform report. As you see, 9A is less than 8A, and 8E and 8F is 0. So for the next section, ethnicity and gender, it's important to remember other includes DBEs who are not members of the groups listed but are determined eligible for the DBE program, such as a Caucasian male with a disability. It does not mean unknown or multi-race. One of the most common mistakes we see is that 9.5, the total dollars to DBEs, is not equal in square 11H. These numbers should be equal since they're asking for the same thing, as well as the total number of DBE contracts. So as you can see here, there's 33 total DBE contracts on the top portion, and then 24 on the bottom portion. So this number should be equal so that we can turn our reports in with consistency to the USDOT.
There's a question, Kim. It says, what if you have subcontracts awarded to DBEs in the reporting period that the prime contracts were reported? So what you would do is you would list the portion of the prime contract that the prime was performing in the race neutral prime as race neutral, meaning the 0, and then you would list as race conscious if they were a result of a contract goal in the subcontract column. Did I explain that correctly, Kim? In other words, I think the question is, you have a DBE prime, but the prime has DBE subcontracts. So still, the prime is always going to be race neutral, but the subcontracts can be reported under the subcontract amount.
And then we also had someone suggest to black out, I believe, 8. Oh, let me start. So
Yes, the one where there's 0, I know that there are some forms floating out of there that black out those boxes, which is fine if that helps you. We just want to remain consistent with the regulations, and so we are using that form directly from the regulations. So let me go back and try to explain your question later after I figure out what I'm saying. So I'll let Kim go on.
Okay, thanks, Martha.
Right, and Darren says that it's possible that the number of subcontracts can be greater than the number of primes with the dollar amount because they may be left over from a previous year, and that's absolutely right, Darren. But most times, that number, the dollar amount of subcontracts is going to be a subset of the prime. But you're absolutely right, there are some exceptions.
It can be more of a red flag that that's something you want to go back and review to make sure that that is accurate. Sorry, I must have gotten confused.
That's right. Sorry.
Okay, part 4 is the actual payments on contracts. So the first thing that we commonly see is that 12C is left blank. And we're going to go over how to calculate that here next. And then also we see 14E as an overall percentage of 12E plus 13E. And this is not correct. In fact, I received a PDF and an Excel format from a state, and it was correct on the Excel format because it had the formulas built in, and it was wrong on the PDF. So if you use that Excel template, it'll help you, especially with these formulas down here in this section.
Okay, here's a question about the exception if the subcontract dollar amount is a subset of the prime dollar amount. I think what we're talking about are sometimes there's a carryover from the previous year. And so those dollar amounts may carry over from the previous year in which probably the prime contractors were at one point larger than the subcontractors, but because of the year that you're filling it out, it may be a different case. It may be that the dollar amount is greater because of the carryover. But primarily, and I would say most of the time, it's going to be a subset of those dollars. So if it comes out that it is larger, that's a red flag. You might want to look at it and try to figure out why that is, and if it is a carryover. That you are paying money, committing money from previous years.
Okay, thanks, Martha. So for 12C, in order to find this, you're going to take the value of all the contracts with DBE goals and then find out what the dollar value would be in comparison to the percentage and add these all up. Now this can be confusing, so I have an example below. So let's say that an electrical contract worth $60,000 for lighting, and 10% is towards the DBE firm. That would give you $6,000. And then a $25,000 worth contract with a 20% DBE goal, that gives you $50,000. And then a roofing contract with the DBE goal of 20% is $100,000. So if you add these three amounts together, you get $156,000. And then you need to remember to take the federal share of that, which in our example was 80%. So this equals out to $124,800. So For that one, it's just important to break down and then go back and double check the DBE counting rules for trucking and hauling, and then come to that final sum and then take the federal share amount. So here we can see a correctly filled out bottom portion of the uniform report with 12C filled out and 13, 13, 14E completely filled out as well. So for other reminders, you want to make sure that I-10 and I-11 are completed on December 1st. These are year-end totals. Also check your math or use the Excel template, which will be mandatory June 1st. And like Martha said, some things are red flags. Some cases it does check out and it is okay. But if you do see some numbers that are unusually high or low, you want to take a second look at them. So with that, we'll open it up for questions and see if Martha has any other comments.
No, I just realized I could have explained the prime and sub thing. So a prime contractor, say that a prime contract is awarded at the end of year 2013, and it is a certain amount, but then there are certain subcontracts awarded in the next year. Those would be reported on different years' uniform reports. I'm sorry, it would be a fiscal year in that example. So that would be the case where you might have subcontract dollar amount that's greater than the prime contractor dollar amount, but again, it's unusual. So we're going to open up the lines for questions, and this is really hard to discuss. It's very technical over the phone, so bear with us. You will have this information to take with you, but please feel free to ask us some questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your touch-tone telephone at this time. You will hear a tone indicating you have been placed in the queue, and a voice prompt on your phone line will indicate when your line has been opened. Once again, that is star 1 if you have a question.
Sure, I see someone wrote in the chat pod, I will distribute this PowerPoint as well as the recordings and the supplement documents. So definitely, if you have a question, you can contact your division or me or Martha.
And we'll have these available for download.
Yes.
Yeah, at the end.
Yes. Here, I'll put up a file right now.
And we do have a question over the phone lines.
Go ahead.
Caller, your line is open. Please go ahead. Caller, not sure if you're on mute, but your line is open.
Yes, I have a question about the year reporting, that slide. I don't know if she can go back to it or not.
Are you talking about the prime contracts awarded this period and the subcontracts awarded this period?
Because we have that happen all the time here in North Carolina. And that's why our totals, our subcontract total is normally larger than our prime contract awards.
Well, certainly the number of subcontracts would be larger, but are you talking about the dollar amount as well?
It can be.
Because typically what we see in a commitment year is we see the number of primes, and then the subs are a subset of that, so the dollar amount would necessarily be smaller than the prime because the prime would be getting most of the money. But I suppose if there is a prime contract let just prior to this or in the year prior, and that prime contract, the dollar amount was listed in the last year's report, but that prime kept accumulating subcontracts, those dollars then would be listed then in the following year's report if that prime contractor accumulated subcontracts as the years went on, then those could be added to the current reporting series, making it look like or making it actual that the sub dollar amount is greater than the prime, but that would be from prime contracts committed in prior years so that they would be listed on different annual reports, uniform reports from prior years. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's how we're reporting it. We're reporting the subcontracts awarded as we know them, as they get awarded.
And you're absolutely right. And if that's the case, then that's what happens. Most often what we see is that they're going to be less, but in your case, if that's what happened, then you're absolutely fine.
I have a question about the column I. Because you said not to report a full year, which is not what our office in FHWA and our regional office has asked us to do. We usually report half the year, and then the second report is always the entire year.
And that's, and I think that a lot of people have had that information, and that may have been, the way that we wanted it before, but according to the regulations and the way we prefer it now is if you just submit one half, and then the second submission is the other half. So 6 months at a time.
Okay, so if you'll go back to that slide where she talks about the column I.
Oh, that's for the year total, sure.
I know, but that's what I'm getting at. You're asking me to report the first half, and then you're asking me to report the second half, but then you're going back and asking me to add those two together to give you a year-end total. Is that correct?
And that would be included on the second half, right? But you wouldn't add up all of the, you wouldn't make it cumulative throughout the whole report, but you would put in the total year on your second half report.
Okay.
On those part that says year-end total.
Okay, I just want to make sure I get it right, because when FHWA calls me and says, Terry, what have you done here? I just want to say, per this webinar, this is exactly what they told me to report.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And there's someone who says you do not have electronic signatures at this time. And so what we're asking is that you do send us a PDF with the signatures on it in addition to the Excel spreadsheet. So that will make sure we have a signature and at the same time give us an Excel spreadsheet from which Kim can work to create the aggregate reports. And who is posting to SharePoint? That would be the Federal Highway divisions. After you, state DOT, submit your reports to Federal Highway, they will look at it, review it, make sure it looks like it makes sense, and then they will post it to our SharePoint site. Are there any, please? Keep in mind, many states have heavy, can't really read that one.
Many states have a heavy bid opening at the this will set up this scenario that each sees.
Okay, I understand. So yeah, a lot of times with the bidding, heavy bidding at the end of the year, that may be why the subcontracting dollar amount is greater than the prime. So that's a good example there, and thank you. Is there another one?
So someone asked for year-end totals, add column H for the first and the second half. That's correct. You're going to refer back to the first half of your uniform report and just add that to the second half and then enter that number in column I. And then
it might help if you talk on the phone line where it's getting hard to read some of these questions in the pod, but it's up to you.
As a reminder to everyone, that is *1 if you have a question on the phone line.
Okay, we have a long question in the chat pod. Give us a minute to read that.
So in the template we have 14D divided by 14B. Deduction rate.
And what are the instructions saying? We noticed the instructions were wrong on one thing, so.
Instructions say 14A minus 14E. Calculate your totals for each column by adding the race-conscious and race-neutral figures provided in each row above. So we were reporting 14E or 13E.
You don't need to resubmit for previous years. I know that. And let us think about that question. I don't know, Kim, if you've had a chance to process it.
I would follow the form, the cheat sheet that we
Yeah,
had
we
for
did
tax.
notice there are a couple of errors in the instructions. I know that if you may know with the NPRM, there's going to be a proposed new form. We still thought it was valuable to have this webinar because nothing major will change. There were proposed to be some additions. In addition, there are a couple things in the instructions that we noticed are incorrect. So we hope that this sheet that we provided you is helpful. Feel free to email us. Kimberly, do you have your email at the end or in the beginning?
I'll add it up here.
Okay, we'll add it. Therefore, if you have specific questions, it's probably easier if you just email them and we can, research it and get back with you.
And we do have another question on the phone line. Caller, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Hi. I had a question about row 9, the sub-consultant awards, specifically the race-conscious, race-neutral breakdown. If you have a contract with a goal and the DBE subs combined exceed that goal, would the difference be captured under the race-neutral?
Yes, it would, and that's a great question.
Thank you.
And just the dollar amount.
Unless it was more than one contract that exceeded the goal, then it would
Well,
count
yeah.
under the race-neutral rate.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Is there some question about the prime contract? When we talk about prime contracts, the only time you have to be concerned about putting a 0 is in the DBE as prime contract race conscious box. Everything else, you want to put the number of prime contracts in there, the number of DBE prime contracts, but the dollar amount, you want to make sure you put only the dollar amount that the DBEs are performing. So if that DBE prime has subcontracted to non-DBE subs, those would be included in the dollar amount of non-DBE subs.
And there is a calculated form, that's the Uniform Report template, Excel spreadsheet that's located in the file share pod. So if you enter your data, the calculations will come out correctly. Sure, we'll include the division specialist.
Absolutely. When we answer a state question, it's our policy to always include the division office. Are there any other questions?
I do have another question on the phone lines. Caller, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Eli with TechStot. I just wanted to make sure we had clarification on that last question, which is when you have DBE subcontractor opportunities or awards, you count only the race-conscious portion on the race-conscious and anything over on race-neutral, but as far as the counts go, it's only going to be race-conscious?
Okay, the last question talked about if there's a race-conscious goal and the on a contract and the goal is exceeded, that portion that exceeds the goal would be counted as race neutral in your race neutral dollar column.
For the dollar amount?
Yes.
But what about the count?
If they have, what I personally think is it's very difficult to find out which contracts are intended, beyond the goal, but if you do know that a contract is beyond the goal and they have met the goal and yet they continue to use DBEs, and you can keep track of those numbers of DBE contracts that are beyond the goal, then you certainly should include those in race neutral.
Well, because if you make that count, if you separate that count in the on the count portion of it, and you add up the two figures together, it's not going to total number of DBEs, because it's going to be counted in each of them. And the only reason I was asking for clarification is essentially the stance that we've taken with some guidance from our local FHWA group is that award that was made initially, even though it went over, that initial award was a race conscious award. So it gets counted in race conscious. As soon as the dollars start going over what was race consciously committed, then those dollar figures started going in the other end. Do those numbers?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean, and it's a difficult thing to answer because what we have in our guidance and is what counts as race neutral is anything over the contract dollar amount is counted towards race neutral. So what you're saying is that will mess up your report coming out accurately.
Well, in order to do it that way, to make sure that the counts add up, because oftentimes that's one of the very first things that we end up doing here once we completed the report, and making sure that the numbers add up, and it gets checked on every step of the level up, every level on the way up.
Right.
And those numbers are not going to. Those numbers would require more of an explanation, a little asterisk, a little note. So for simplicity purposes, we've taken that approach, or posed that question in the past.
I think that's a very good question. If you could send me or Kim or your division an email, I think it would be good for us to consider, nationwide how we need to address that.
Okay, will do.
Thank you. Does HCR need a signature, or can you just keep it at the division level? Kim, do you prefer a copy of the signed document? I'm fine if you indicate that you have it at the division level. We just need to make sure that somewhere at FHWA there is a signed copy. So if you send us the Excel spreadsheet and you have a signed copy with the division, please just note that.
That's fine, because the Excel format is what I will be using to compile the report.
We just want to make sure somewhere there's a signed copy.
And just to be clear, I'm going to send the recording of this, the PowerPoint, the Excel template, and the instructions. I'll send that out to our divisions, and then I'll ask the divisions to forward that to the state DOTs,
right?
Since the state DOTs don't have access to the SharePoint.
And talking about Federal Highway Division level, I think what you mean is it's okay if you keep a signed a copy at the division level? Yes.
Yes, that's fine.
We have some more people typing. I think probably what we might do is put together these comments. We can print them out, can't we? And make and put together a FAQ. and we'll put that on our SharePoint site, and the divisions can share that with the state DOTs. I think that might help, especially for some of you who want to email your questions in, and we can get clarification and make sure everybody's on the same page. Multiple attendees are typing. Feel free to talk. What does that mean?
This is still Martha. From a non-civil rights program person, we still must do a calculation to determine whether or not they are meeting their goals.
Well, the calculation would be as the top for the commitments. As you know, that's how we determine whether or not the goal is met from the commitments, and that's based on the percentage of which number, Kim? I think it's the total under I on the top.
Mm-hmm.
That would be whether if that, how that compares to your overall goal would be the comparison you would make as to whether or not the state has met the goal. And that is straight out of the regulations, so. Are there any other questions? I think someone else is typing.
I don't have any questions on the phone line. As a reminder to everyone, that is *1 if you have a question today. And we have another question on the phone line.
Sure.
Paula, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Peg from Iowa DOT. I just had a clarification. When we're figuring the percent, I know for race neutral would be like 80% figured in the total dollars. What about the commitment dollars? Is that off with the 80%, or do we get 100% credit on that?
Okay, so what you're talking about is the federal share, and it typically is 80% federal, 20% state funds for contracts. That's not always the case, but that is a pretty typical example. And so we want you to report the federal share, and what that means is out of the total money that we give the state DOT and federal highway funds each year, we want to know what percentage of those federal funds goes to DBE. So that's why we only want you to report the federal share, and that's both in commitments and dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Are there any other questions? I don't see anyone typing. We'll give it a couple more seconds, but we certainly will put together an FAQ based upon these questions. It looks like some other people are typing. We'll give it a couple more minutes. Do you know when the new NPRM with the new form will be out? No, that is still being reviewed about what the comments. Not many comments were received pursuant to the new form, but some. There are meetings being held right now as to what that final report will look like, and the hope is that that will get published sometime in the spring. But certainly your June report will be based on this. Usually when the report, the NPRM comes out, I don't know when it will become effective with respect to the new report. We have to wait and see. Do you have an address to look at the NPRM? If you go to the OSDBU website, there is a link to the NPRM. However, I just went on it today and it didn't seem to work. But I know that's not very helpful, is it? If you want to go ahead and email me, I can send you a copy of it. This is Martha. Again, it's only the proposed, and it was published in September of 2012, so it's been a long time with comments and under discussion. Another person typing. Anyone else on the line?
I have no further questions on the phone line.
Okay. Okay, yes. What we indicated early on is you will be doing a report for FTA, FAA potentially, and Federal Highway. They are all separate reports. They have the same uniform report, but you will send this report to us. FTA, I think, is pretty good about having webinars on reports. Should be all the same rule, but this is specific to FHWA.
And we are working on getting a reporting website put together.
Absolutely. We're embarrassed that we are the only mode that does not have a electronic submission process for the uniform reports, and we are working with our IT team to put that together. We're hoping to use a team system like FTA, but it's important that that connects to our overall financial system, so it's going to take some work, but we definitely are working toward that.
And we're moving in the right direction since we're going from Word documents and PDFs to Excel.
In SharePoint, so we make baby steps here. Okay, I don't see any more questions. Again, you have our email. Kim added that in there. We will be posting an FAQ. Thank you so much for your attention. Darren is giving us a link. Is that for the NPRM, Darren? Yep, I believe so. Thank you very much, Darren, for that. So if anyone wants to look at the NPRM, the proposed revisions to the report are in there in the Appendix B. Feel free to look that over. It's too late to comment, but you can get an idea of what might be coming. All right, thank you very much, everyone. I hope this is helpful. Certainly, I hope that you download this document and that is helpful. If you submit it in Excel, you've made our day. And if you put your name on the report, we're really happy to, or the name of your state. Anyway, thank you so much for attending, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our conference for today. Thank you for your participation and for using AT&T Teleconference Service. You may now disconnect.